Moving over to my new deck list, Surrender versus Posesi. Getting my headset back over to these players. Surrender feels like he had, similar to the other Korean players that we have here this weekend, the cornerstone of his strategy, or at least the signature twist, the warrior. That's what they realized that maybe some of the other players didn't quite clock onto, in my opinion at least. That is a very, very strong addition to their lineup. Druid and Demon Hunter is just very strong in its own right. But then the mage, the Highlander mage, which has been, in my opinion, a little bit lackluster, but Surrender still thought it was worth bringing over, say, a Warlock or a Priest.
Yeah, indeed. If we compare his lineup to Chonsu's and Rivius's, and we're assuming that they've had at least a little bit of practice together as a group, he's the only one out of the three that decided to bring Mage, whereas the other two thought that Priest of one archetype or another was a better bring. So now it is, I guess it does remain to be seen how the Mage performs overall, because on day one, we had a large amount of mirrors, and now in the top four, this is the only mage remaining, so it's gotta go as a field where not everyone has a box.
Yeah, can't pretend to be overly upset about that one. That was getting a little bit fatiguing towards the end of the day, seeing that much explosiveness happening. I can only take so much in a single sitting. But here for Posesi on the other side, he's got much more standard stuff, I think it's fair to say. Druid, Demon Hunter, Warlock, just the three top decks at the moment. I think if you were to ask your average Hearthstone player on Twitter at the moment, they would be saying, yeah, that's what you want to bring to a tournament. And then for the fourth deck, we have just a straight up Galakrond Rogue here, not a Highlander variant that we've seen from some of the other players like Tom60229. It is just the sort of old school Galakrond Rogue with the new secret package thrown in. What's your opinion of that? How are you feeling about this secret rogues that you're seeing knocking about at the moment?
That's right. Well, if we talk about pure secret rogue, I am not a fan. If we're talking about Galakrond rogue, though, it's definitely still a strong archetype, I would say. I mean, we've seen Skull of Gul'dan draw a lot of ire from the players of Hearthstone, no matter what level they are, just because of how strong the draw and discount effect is. Well, Rogue was doing that first. Wondrous Wand, Heist Baron, Togwaggle, and Galakrond himself were able to just do a lot of scamming, I would say, for rogues. And now they've got that new bag of tricks in terms of the secret package. I'm not exactly sure how this actually skews its consistency. Does it make it better in the early game, or does it make it a lot clunkier? Because if you draw the secrets without Hanar or Hanar without the secrets, it does just seem to have a lot more dead hand potential. But overall, I do just like the choice to bring Galakrond Rogue as an archetype.
I agree, and I think it's really interesting actually that you bring up the idea of full-on secret rogue, because there's not actually that many secret synergy cards introduced in Ashes of Outland, and Posesi has all of them. He's got the full suite of secrets, plus Hanar and the Blackjack Stunners thrown in there as well, which I think most players would argue is a little bit overkill, given that it's, I think, generally considered that Bamboozle is the best of the new rogue secrets, and then maybe like Ambush second and Dirty Tricks just in third place, although I'm sure there's some dispute amongst that. But it does improve the consistency of the secret package, if nothing else. You're going to be drawing more secrets, which in general are not especially powerful cards in Hearthstone on their own, but it means you're unlikely to draw Hanar without one of the secrets. I think personally, I would prefer to see some of the more traditionally powerful Galakrond Rogue cards thrown in there in place of a couple of the secrets. But Posesi has been playing some very, very good Hearthstone the last few days, so I'm willing to defer to him on this one.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And what he's cut, I guess, is some of the removal options from Galakrond Rogue that we were seeing in previous metas, like Sap, Eviscerate. Eviscerate did have that face damage, but ever since the removal of Leroy, we've seen Rogue be less about trying to go for one big Leroy Shadow Step Eviscerate turn. Now they're just trying to make sure that on the turn when they draw their zero cost cards, they just grab a hold of the board and never let it go. So it remains to be seen whether the secrets actually help it in the early game, but there's definitely a lot of potential there. And I can't wait to see how Rogue just as a class evolves in the coming weeks, because I do think it should be seeing more representation than it currently has in GM.
I definitely agree, especially as the nerfs come at some point as well. Maybe that will improve the standing of Rogue after Demon Hunter takes a little bit of a hit. But it's interesting you bring up the effect of Leroy as well, because the effects of that card moving to the Hall of Fame have been so significant. The entire bedrock of Hearthstone feels like it's been shifted, and I think because of that, going off your point that Rogue is a lot less of a damage deck at the moment, I kind of wonder if it should be Highlander should be the way to go instead, that just runs a few more big threatening minions, like Siamat and Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, instead of this version that's a little bit more low curving.
And I would love to go on and on about Rogue, because
yes.
there is a lot to be said about Ender, especially since somebody else did bring it this week, Tom. And he apparently regrets the bring, at least as a companion to Zoo, but we can get into that later, as now the first match is Posesi's Druid with quite a choice opening hand up against Surrender's Mage, which we were worried about.
So as for Posesi here, I'd have to say that, before we even take a look at the Mage hand, the Druid hand is just looking completely insane. Fungal Fortunes, as long as it doesn't discard, taking a look at his list, both of the exotic mount sellers, which, we've seen stuff like that happen already this weekend. There's been a lot of minions being drawn off of it. I definitely like Posesi's shot going into it here, even if we have been consistently critical of his Druid.
It is true. We're critical of the build, but the draws of this hand, that looks just about as good as it gets for an opener. Although Surrender's hand does have at least a little bit of mid-game going for it, but we already see our very favorite emotive player, at least in APAC. I do believe we're going to be seeing a lot of looking to the left and the right and the head shaking, and possibly even the infamous slow clap once Surrender sees what's in store for him with Posesi's curve.
Yeah. Well, at the very least for the moment, he doesn't have anything to be too upset about. Fungal Fortunes obviously is a nice draw for the Druid to have, but nothing exploding off the board quite yet.
And we can already see that Surrender has at least a turn 3, 4, 5 option. He has Zephyrus at some point if he needs more removal. Malygos can, of course, maybe offer the Arcane Explosion upgrade, which lines up pretty well against Glowflies, and then Rolling Fireball in and of itself is also removal. But with all of those options, I still don't know if it's going to be enough to deal with what Posesi can offer. However, we do know that this is the list that's cutting the Forest Aid. And as of now, there's no overflow to really take advantage of the Kael'thas.
Yeah. I've got to be honest, I'm actually not hating Surrender's chances here, especially with the Dragon Caster that was picked up off the top there. I suppose the main thing he's considering now is whether or not he makes a big Edwin, because he could, of course, go coin Zephyrus, and then it would offer him Edwin, and he could get a 6/6 there. But I think in the end, I agree actually here. You just want to go with the Water Elemental. It still has 6 health.
Exactly.
The 3 attack versus 6 doesn't matter too much.
I completely agree with that reasoning. I mean, we did talk about that before. Maybe Mage's game plan against these token druids is to freeze the board and try and race them. But I don't know if Surrender's hand necessarily lends him to being able to do that. He does have the Alexstrasza, but none of the freeze effects. So it looks like he's going for more of a just get the board while he can right now and prepare for the worst type of game plan. So now Posesi has the overflow. He's got the Glowflies. It's just a matter of the timing of Kael'thas. And we've talked about the all-important waiting for 7 mana before you go off with Kael'thas, because it just makes it so much more powerful to have the Iron Barks and Bog Beams as 0 mana spells.
Is it ever a ramp turn here instead? Because I think the main thing that Posesi wants to set up here is Glowfly plus Soul of the Forest.
True.
And, he doesn't even need Kael'thas to do that. He just needs 9 mana, which he could get next turn by ramping.
My people are addicted to it.
I mean, it's a very good point, but it probably would be floating a lot of mana. And if Surrender, say, had some type of Frost Nova play, he suddenly gets locked out, unable to do anything onto the board except draw. And at that point, he would be overdrawing, I think. So instead, Posesi is choosing to commit the Kael'thas without overflow, though. It's a bit interesting, the way he's gone for it.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I was definitely anticipating to just see the
what to do?
Glowfly without the Kael'thas on that turn. It's kind of tough, though, because he wants to dump cards to make room for overflow next turn, obviously, because he wants to find the exotic mount seller as soon as he possibly can. And I guess actually, again, I was saying at the start of the day, there's been talk that Posesi's version of the deck that doesn't run Gift of the Wild and Forest's Aid, Kael'thas isn't even that overbearingly powerful in it. In which case, maybe just throwing it down a little bit more aggressively is fine.
He did create a very awkward board state for the mage to deal with, because if you use Blizzard, the Kael'thas stays alive. If you use Rolling Fireball, it doesn't deal with many of the glowflies without additional traits. And he's achieved now pulling out a lot of resources from Surrender's hand while still maintaining a pretty strong, and he can still use the Soul of the Forest on this.
Do you think it's the Soul of the Forest turn and not just an overflow?
Well, he is starting with Wrath, unless he expects to get exactly an Innervate out of this.
I mean, I was thinking he could just go for like double trade, maybe even like 4 trades, clear up the board, leave himself with a 2-1, and then go for overflow, because I think like far and away the most powerful thing he can do in the next few turns is Exotic Mount Seller.
I think that's fair, but isn't it also quite powerful to just have 2 layers of a board? Right now, granted, like one of the minions gets traded away by the Dragon Caster, but it's close. If he had one of the 2 Savageurs in the deck in hand, I would advocate more heavily for the Soul of the Forest. Right now, though, I wonder. Because it does look like that's how the turn's going to end up. He's just going to go for Soul there. He's just debating now whether he wants to Hero Power or Cycle on the Overconfident Orc. And really on Hero Power.
Because this board is... the awkward spot that has been found here for Posesi is, yes, he has a Soul of the Forest stuck on his board, and as I was saying, that's what you want to do. But the difference between 4 and 7 minions on the board, or even 6, is huge. You're just not dealing that much damage anymore. Surrender doesn't have to clear this board to stay alive.
It's true. I mean, it's a very tricky line to walk, because having actually these smaller minions and the soul on them actually makes Blizzard worse for Surrender, because they're not frozen, they're dead, and then the death rattles can immediately attack. Whereas a freeze would have completely locked out a theoretical exotic Mount Seller board. But Surrender still doesn't know what's in Posesi's hand. He knows there are 2 Savageurs in the list, so he might be forced to actually overcommit onto these glowflies instead.
So how does he do that then? Is it Zephyrus plus Consecration? Or does he just
Holy
go
Nova.
with... sorry, even better, Holy Nova, of course.
Yeah.
Or Bone Wraith, I suppose. Like, Bone Wraith is pretty well statted at the moment.
So if you go Bone Wraith and then Zephyrus, it probably gives you... Does it give you Flame Strike for the next turn, possibly? But yeah, Vaxa will be an option. I am not completely sure of this, but it does look like he's going for the Holy Nova option. We didn't quite get to see the choices there, but I'm glad we at least mentioned one that was possible. And now...
And you have to imagine now we're leading into an overflow, right? I guess there's still the potential for going for a Glowfly plus Wrath to take some stuff out. So
well, the
actually, this
now
is an
just
interesting point.
Yeah, the Glowfly now just seems a little bit too fragile without either a buff or the Soul of the Forest.
But I wonder if Posesi has a read that there's no Flame Strike, because Dragon Caster was cast earlier with Fireball. With Rolling Fireball. Whereas Flame Strike was probably better then. It would have completely cleared the board. Might have left the Kael'thas alive.
Yeah, I was going to say, that doesn't seem like a very fun thing to do. I don't know if he's got a clear read.
Maybe you can't have the read. But I think that might be playing into his decision here, saying, you know what, I don't think you do have the board clear. You just used Zephyrus, you've used Rolling Fireball.
That much is pretty fair to say, given that this is Highlander Mage.
Having said that, taking a look at the list, there's not even Flame Strike in the deck. It's just...
Is there not? So that is pretty much Posesi's mindset, then make him have the third one, or have the Malagos roll. Can he get the Arcane Explosion? We did see it, but it was picked really quickly, so oh my goodness. That is pretty rough for Posesi, and now it definitely has got to be the overflow. He's now looking for the Mount Sellers to pull him out of this one, but Surrender has full board initiative. He has Tortolan Pilgrim into maybe Power of Creation to take a stranglehold on the board, and Alex Straza to follow up. So that's a big oof for Posesi.
That was a very interesting couple of turns there, and I think, you know, all of Posesi's plays looked a little bit weird, but I think the turn he just played, where he went for the glow flight, I think on that turn I actually really liked that play because it just forced Surrender to have an answer. He'd found the Savage Roar at that point, and you know, as we said, with no Flame Strike in the deck, it was really just Blizzard that was the best answer that Surrender had, and obviously the Malagos into Arcane Explosion, which he found. But yeah, I think that was a good bit of pressure to put on your opponent there from Posesi.
Yeah, looking back at it now, and of course we have that hindsight that there is no Flame Strike. It had to be very specific answers, one after the other from Surrender to be able to answer that many boards of 2/2s. Didn't quite work out for Posesi, but at the very least, I like the guts and the recognition. So now, Surrender is looking for Power of Creation. I don't see a good argument for going for Mana Saver plus Bone Wraith instead. It doesn't seem to put very much damage onto the board. But I guess the Pilgrim could completely whiff, but there's other good spells other than Pop. There's a Conjurer's Calling is a good one for all the targets. Depending on what type of person you are, Box is a good one.
What to do? What to do?
I mean, I guess you're probably going to want to save that for a when you need to remove the board instead.
I guess. There's also Deep Freeze though, so I'm not sure. I think personally I would have taken the role with the Foretold and Pilgrim, but I do not by any measure assume to be better than Surrender. So
there's just a lot of whiffs as well though, right? Like Arcane Breath, Ray of Frost, I suppose AI is okay, Ice Barrier, like I don't know.
That's fair.
It was close, I agree, but I think given the fact that you can find Blizzard and that might be your only out at some point, it's probably worth it.
With the Frost Nova in hand though, it just seems...
true. Yeah.
There is Posesi's redevelopment turn. Not too bad on the outcomes, except for, of course, the Desert Hare. But Albatross could be very useful. As we failed to identify yesterday, it does, of course, mess with Highlanders. In Surrender's case, he's already played Zephrys, but it could still shut off Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or Reno.
Yeah, that was, of course, pretty bad luck for us yesterday when we were idiots. But going all in here is Posesi saying this is far and away my best chance of taking the game. And getting a Zixor as well. Maybe he's right. This is probably his best chance.
And the Khadgar, this is something I am surprised to see every time I see it. Surrender's inclusion. But he can go for... this is a complicated set of turns, huh? So he can go up to 9 mana, but that's not quite... Sorry, up to 10 mana, but that's not quite ideal because he wants to do the Tortolan plus Frost Nova so that he can set up a lethal with Alexstrasza, right?
If he goes for Tortolan finds Blizzard, attacks with the Mana Saver, so he goes up to 10 mana, he can play the Ooze as well, which then puts 15 damage on the board that potentially sets up for Alexstrasza lethal next turn.
That is the best case scenario, right? Because Posesi just can't do much about it other than his removal spells. The other play, though, is taking the guaranteed Nova and just play Ooze and Khadgar and ping. That's a fair amount of damage. I don't think this sets up the 2 turns.
I don't think it does. But it does mean that with a Tortolan Pilgrim, maybe you can find a Blizzard again next turn and just go for 2-turn lethal that way.
Pinging away a minion instead. I guess the ping to face doesn't matter when you're really looking at an Alexstrasza anyway, an aggressive one.
Just makes it that a little bit squishier in case he has to go for a box next turn as well.
Even though Surrender could technically go up to 11 mana, he's only showing 12 on the board and 13 with a ping, so it's not quite enough.
Yeah.
And Posesi can use Crystal Power. Well, of course, he's gonna start cycling, but at least one of these minions is getting removed, I can imagine.
Yeah, he's got to kill something.
Even the Hero Power committed to deal with the Bone Wraith Makes a lot of sense. And now Surrender, since he didn't have the Queen 2 turn setup, is now going to have to go for the Pilgrim into exactly Blizzard, is it?
Or box.
Yes, correct, if you're that type of person.
Deep freeze as well could be used to freeze the Mount Cellar. You're just dead. Yeah, it's got to be Pilgrim.
Shake of the head from Surrender. It's unfortunate we still can't see the Discover options, but he's been picking the best choices pretty quickly, so I get the feeling Blizzard is not available at the moment.
Yeah, or maybe it's Blizzard and box and he needs to choose which one to go for.
Fair, but I think it's a pretty clear Blizzard at that point.
Sure.
Well, is it because, yeah, there's no death rattles that would spawn.
Does clear up space on the board, I suppose, but there's no rushes or charges or anything. And he does, in the end, go for the Blizzard, which makes me think if I had to do my Sherlock Holmes deduction, the only other option you'd even consider, really, is box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what Surrender's thinking about now is that he might not have the lethal if there's removal for the ooze, and to be fair, Posesi still has, I guess, a Bog Beam left to remove that. And then Surrender would only be showing 10 on board. Oh wait, he would still have the lethal with
But
the
then
ping.
with the ping.
Yeah, never mind. So Blizzard is just his option there. Posesi, though, has some summons to try and look for a rush or a taunt. That's not it.
That is neither. Maybe if he can find the Iron Bark off the top as well, that could save him.
Yeah.
Although
4
I think he
cards
might
left
use
in the
both
deck
those earlier.
now. Okay, so is there Crystal Power left maybe for healing? Oh, there's a Bog Beam. And there's a Crystal Power, so we can stay alive.
He can stay alive. That is a huge deal. I mean, he may have just won the game right there.
Well, there's fatigue setting in soon as well. And Surrender still has the natural
That's
Blizzard
true.
in the deck.
Yeah.
Man.
I wonder if Surrender can win just by transitioning over to a removal game plan. Like, if he freezes the Mount Cellar and then clears off everything else, or as much as he can.
Everything seems like a bit of a stretch, but maybe freezing just enough minions to survive something like a Savage Roar and then trading the rest.
Oh, you've also got to remember, though, that there's Zixor Prime which can be shuffled in if that's ever cleared as well.
Oh, true. So that's got to be one of the frozen minions if ever, and not traded into. But Surrender still has the natural Blizzard or Ray of Frost. That's not something guaranteed to help.
Well, Leroy's out of the
shake of
game
the
now,
head.
so that's not an option.
Definitely not. Man, I'm not seeing it. He could hope for taunts, I suppose, is his best option.
What are the best mana slots to go for, though? Like, do you just go for 8 because it's the most expensive? Or is it like double Corkron is your best chance? I don't even know.
I couldn't tell you, but I'm looking at using the Malagos for value trade onto the 5/2 and then using Tortolan to remove the most damage. And just doing it that way. But oof, that means he forgoes the Deep Freeze. But Deep Freeze itself just would not be able to stave off enough damage. Plus, he knows that double Savage Roar is going to guaranteed be in hand unless the Zixor is shuffled, and he's hoping that that one remaining card is a Savage Roar.
Well, he's relying on the Thunderous Calling. I think it is, again, his best chance of taking the game.
Oh, that's a taunt!
Ooh!
Katrina can revive. What can she revive?
Bone Wraith?
Bone Wraith, yes. This is getting extremely close, but a draw of Zixor could also be insane. The overconfident. Okay, so double Roar probably still gets there, right? Yeah, for sure. Because
Raw.
is it for sure? Yes, because the hair has exactly enough damage. The breakpoints worked out perfectly for Posesi there. Surrender, props to him for, landing on Conjurer's Calling as the only possible solution there, because Deep Freeze just didn't do it. But in the end, Posesi manages to take it.
And what a redemption story for Posesi. After being dominated on his Druid in previous series. Obviously able to come out the champion in the end, but it really did feel like that was his only chance of taking the loss against Rivius yesterday. Takes a win in the first first game of the series, which is a great way to get things rolling. He's now, I think, in just a pretty good position actually against Surrender, because in my opinion, that mage could just be a real sticking point for Surrender going into the rest of this series.
It was an incredibly close match, and we could look back and maybe wonder if Surrender had maybe a better spot to try and develop. I mean, I was advocating that Tortolan for Power of Creation. Again, it wasn't very high odds, and he did have to, but I think that he could see that there wasn't a clear 2-turn setup.
Yeah.
Even if Posesi didn't have removal at those start turns. Later on, though, he did manage to set up the 2-turn, and Posesi drew into what he needed to remove and stay alive. But man, that endgame situation was just really high level Hearthstone, the type of stuff I like to watch for sure.
It really was a shame we couldn't get to see the options as to whether he had the choice between Blizzard or Box at the end, but who knows, maybe he'll be kicking himself over that one as well. And I agree again. I think even at the start of the game, turn 4, maybe he should have gone for Edwin and just made a 6-6 and try and race and freeze throughout the game. We agreed with his choice at the time, and I think it probably is still correct. But it's those kind of things that you need to look back on and analyze if you want to be playing at the absolute top level of Hearthstone. But the upshot of it is that the mage is still knocking about, and I believe after Posesi's Demon Hunter was banned, and now the Druid has taken a win, it's going to be the Rogue and the Warlock left behind, which I think might be slightly scary matchups, because while Mage was a great matchup against Rogue before the rotation, with Luna's Pocket Galaxy still in there, or at least a pretty good matchup against Rogue, in my opinion, it now, I think, maybe struggling a little bit more, having to pay full mana cost for all its big minions.
Yeah, that is definitely a matter of concern. Although Rogue also has lost, as we mentioned, Leroy, and thus a lot of their reach, which is what Mage mainly had to worry about, I would say, as long as they were in a decent spot on board in the end game. They just had to hope that the Leroy wasn't there so Rogue couldn't cheese out a win. And that's not an option anymore. I'd be pretty happy to see that matchup, though. I don't think we've seen Mage versus Rogue all weekend yet.
Yeah, I don't think we have either. I mean, I'm always happy to see Rogue. I played a stupid amount of the Galakron Rogue in the previous season. It's basically all I was playing, and I had a lot of fun with it.
I'll admit to doing that as well.
Yes. We are true Hearthstone degenerates. We cannot deny it. But before we get into that, and hopefully we do get to see a little bit of the Rogue, we're going to jump to a quick break before we come back with more Hearthstone Grandmasters and the conclusion of Surrender versus Posesi. Welcome back, everybody, to Hearthstone Grandmasters. Once again, this is the Asia-Pacific region, and it is Sunday, so we are finding out who our winner is going to be today for Asia-Pacific, as well as, of course, Europe and Americas later on. But we are in our semi-final match of the day now to find out who is going to be joining us in the final alongside Rivius after his defeat of Chonsu earlier on today. Surrender is now 1 game down versus Posesi after a pretty convincing performance with the Druid versus the Mage. And we're feeling a little bit scared for Surrender going into the rest of this series, but what do you think is going to be happening if he wants to turn this around, Gia?
Yeah, particularly we were feeling scared for the mage. And I mean, I thought at the beginning of that match or towards the middle that it had a pretty good spot after being able to deal with both glowfly swarms and even a soul of the forest. But that really tricky endgame situation, which I think piloted from both ends to a very high level Surrender, thinking about the 2-turn setups. I still wonder if there's anything he could have done a bit more aggressively. But in the end, Posesi did manage to take that. And now maybe the mage would still have its best shot against rogue, perhaps, just going off of how the meta was last time, and also just thinking that Warlock seems like a tough one to beat.
Yeah, I think that Mage still has a lot of very powerful tricks up its sleeve that it could use to take down the Rogue, especially as the Rogue for Posesi has cut a lot of the reactive cards in the deck. Eviscerate, Sap. I suppose it does have the Blackjack Stunner, which is kind of like an even better version of Sap, much better version of Sap, if you can get it to activate with the Secret in play. But, you know, there's still the Reno to clear the board, both Renos, I suppose. Dragoncaster into a early Power of Creation or Deep Freeze might be able to close out the game. But before we get into that, it is first going to be the Demon Hunter from Surrender. And I feel like this matchup against the Rogue is very, very tasty indeed.
Feels great. They pretty much exactly need backstab and SI, and I don't even think there's an SI in the list. Can't possibly fit with all of the secrets that Posesi's included, the full suite of 6. He at least has Seal Fate and a 1-drop, so that's something that helps a little bit in the early game. But the lack of Eviscerates, I think, will also be feeling a little bit painful for Posesi. Surrender with the choice 1-drops. Fellwing also seems quite good. And of course, Twin Slice. So it is just going to be a full keep. Both players keeping at least the majority of their hands. So you're going to see the decks operate at close to optimal early game.
Definitely looks that way, especially as Posesi just rapid fire, one after the other, found 2 fantastic cards. Bamboozle coming down the turn after the Pharaoh Cat. That sounds great to me. If you ever want to get rid of that, you're going to be turning into a 4-drop by accident. And also the lifesteal there that was gained off of the Pharaoh Cat itself. That can be absolutely huge, given that Demon Hunter doesn't have that many damage spells to kill it off. They're going to have to rely on minions and weapon attacks, which of course grant the lifesteal.
Exactly. It's just pretty much exclusively I-Beam, and the Reborn would be very annoying for them. The only happy way for Surrender to clear that, I would say, is like I-Beam plus some Ultra shenanigans to deny all of the lifesteal. But before we worry about that too much, Surrender is going all in as early as now, the most development, and both ends of the Twin Slice invested just to make sure that he can get as much damage there as possible. What a top deck from Posesi though. Backstab is huge.
And Surrender was just saying, please don't have backstab, please don't have backstab, please don't have backstab, because all of a sudden his next turn as well becomes absolutely awful. Frenzied Fellwing just cannot be played.
Garbage, and it's also trapping the Crimson Sigil Runner from getting the Outcast effect.
This is what the French would call a lay disaster.
Lay miserable.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And on the flip side, though, Posesi with no Seal Fate target is just going to have to develop one of his secrets there. Choosing Dirty Tricks, of course, because he doesn't have a minion for the Bamboozle to actually proc on. Although, is it actually that straightforward? Because maybe the Bamboozle now is just there invested to maybe proc with the Ancestral Guardian.
But do you want it to proc on the Ancestral Guardian? Would you rather have the lifesteal than the average 7-drop? Yeah, you'd probably rather have a 7-drop.
In this situation where he's not behind at all, 2 health lower than what Surrender has, I do think I can get behind the more proactive play. And And Surrender
But
with
either
the
way,
Frozen Shadow Weaver tech, not the best, but at least he has something to play this turn.
yeah, Frozen Shadow Weaver that has kind of been allowed to come into play, I feel like, because of the fact that Rogue has fallen on the back burner. Whereas here, a Seal Fate in hand shows exactly why 3 health, 3 cost minions are sketchy, to say the least, in the current metagame.
There's the I-Beam you were talking about, but the Reborn is such a pain for Surrender because now either he turns this into a 7-drop, or if he ignores it, Posesi can just keep healing and basically negating every damage dealt by the Frozen Shadow Weaver. So that's such an awkward situation to deal with. We can see, though, for Surrender, he could start by going face and then playing the Fellwing and freeing up the Sigil Runner for its draw, perhaps.
I think it has to be that, right? I don't see anything else that looks decent at all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. You would want to go I-Beam first so that it still has cost 1 after you draw with Crimson Sigil Runner, right? But you're still going to be drawing off the runner.
They will never catch me.
And that is not a non-attack based removal, so Surrender is gonna have to fight the if he wants to deny the lifesteal. But at this point, I quite like just ignoring it, honestly, because
Really?
what is this? Okay, at the very least, if you go face, Posesi will have to trade it away, right? To actually remove some of your damage on board.
Yeah, but that's
I don't know.
4 health that he's just gained then.
It's 4 health, but
Now
I
he
don't
trades
know.
anyway.
It's
He
tough to
basically just
say.
exchanged. Surrender exchanged a whole bunch of health of his own health to sacrifice Posesi's health, because now Posesi has to trade in with his 7-drop into one of his, but he
But it's a
doesn't get the
value
lifesteal.
trade this time.
Yeah,
know.
sure. I mean, that's what Surrender was praying for, right? That it would be a
Right.
low stated 7,
Right.
which
Fair.
it kind of was. It was a tough call.
We'd have to look at the average stats of 7-drops, but that's not to say that Surrender is out of it. I mean, he's got a pretty powerful combo coming up over the next few turns with Warglaves and Satyr Overseer, but it does require Posesi to play a couple of minions to get the full board of 2/2s. So the debate now is whether he just goes for the Satyr this turn, gets the development, hopes that the Satyr sticks, and then plays the Warglaves, or you just get the mana development out of the way.
You got to be playing Warglaves, right? You play it first. Like, I suppose, having said that, that you have seen a backstab, you have seen a Seal Fate. There's no Abysses in the list. There's no SI7 agents. It's not ridiculous to assume that the Satyr will stick on board. Especially as it's heading into turn 6, which means they likely want to play Kronks, if they have that in their hand. Obviously, we can see Posesi has the Galakrond already. So, having thought through it more, I wouldn't hate to see the Satyr Overseer.
Surrender, of course, ends up going for the Warglaves. It was interesting that he was pointing face initially. Maybe, I don't know if this is overthinking on my part, but there's some argument to leaving a guaranteed minion up.
Yeah.
You do take an extra 5 for leaving it up, but that's another 2/2 from the Satyr. In any case, Posesi has played at least one more minion.
Posesi wondering if it's worth playing minions at all, kind of including the ambush, actually, in that discussion.
Yeah.
Because if Satyr comes down, that's boom, boom, 2 hits, and then very nice big board for Surrender indeed.
And the lackeys at 1 health mean that even just for the hero power, as the 3rd hit, they could still die. Because
Sorry, go ahead.
The Warglaves can attack thrice, right?
Yes.
I mean, sorry,
hero
twice,
power.
and then, yeah, it triggers your basic attack.
The Ethereal Lackey did have the potential to hit Plague of Madness there, which would, of course, overwritten the weapon for Warglaves of Azzinoth, and when Posesi has obviously very small minions, that would have been a very nice option. But instead he gets Sinister Strike, Cold Blood, and Shiv. He goes for what is probably the most aggressive option, but I guess also can transition into just trading if he needs to.
Right. And now Surrender can go for that big development turn, but the draw of the Gladebound Adept presents another interesting option.
Yeah, do you just
More
smack
damage
face?
onto the board.
You could just go
I
Hero
mean-
Power face, Glavebound face.
True.
I grow impatient.
At this point, Surrender, like, in his mindset, if Posesi has the Galakron, he's just not winning anyway, right? So, I mean, we can see there's bad news for him.
Maybe you're winning if they have the Galakron, because if you go for the Satyr line and they summon a 2/3, you hero power, you can take out all 3 of the minions.
Okay, true.
And having gone through all that, I think I like this because it does mean that with Galakron not being fully invoked yet, there's a pretty decent chance that Surrender, the Posesi can't actually clear this board from Surrender.
Fair enough. And with the draw of the Chaos Strike of a 1-drop, that is actually probably one of the best things Surrender could have gotten. And now it's come to a point where Posesi's gotta get something insane off of the Galakron. I'm not sure quite how invoked it is, but we've seen a backstab leave, we've seen the Eviscerates cut from the list.
You know what, I actually think this was a very smart play from Surrender. I was tempted to just go with the Glaive-bound Adept play and launch everything base, but with a second Warglaives in hand as well. But this very reserved play, I think, you know, if you think about what Rogue is weak to, it is pretty much exclusively wide boards is the bane of their existence. And that's exactly what Surrender managed to do this turn.
Yeah, found the perfect spot to do it. And Posesi's just to play Galakron, hope he just survives the turn, and then he can hopefully, from his perspectives, swing with Kronks.
Yeah.
So now Skull of Gul'dan drawn for Surrender, but the rest of his cards also just look very good to pile on the pressure this turn.
So is there any way that Surrender can make it so if Kronks is played for AoE, Posesi dies? If he goes Hero Power Swing plus Glaive-bound, that brings down to 8, which is not lethal on the following turn.
But with the Glaive-bound, he does set up the 2 turn.
Oh yeah, right. So he goes Warglaives this turn.
Right. Yeah.
And then Glaive-bound Adept next turn, so he can just set up the Kronks not saving.
But then again, we've definitely seen Skull of Gul'dan accomplish similar amounts of damage while also giving you more flexibility, so I don't hate just drawing as well.
But what are the other outs outside of Kronks? Like, if Kronks isn't played here, the board just doesn't get cleared, right?
I would imagine some sort of lackey combination.
That seems
just a
really
bunch of kobolds. Yeah. It does, but
I don't know. I think I did prefer just setting up the lethal there. You get him down to...
Okay. A little bit less far-fetched, I guess, is Kronks plus the Taunt lackey in particular.
Or was it not actually quite lethal? Was it only getting him down to 9? Oh, maybe it was only getting him to 9. With the Warglaives play. Yeah, I think it might have been, actually. In which case, the skull would probably been.
But the 9 is still lethal with hero power and Glaive-bound.
That's only 8.
Oh, does it deal 4 or 5? Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart.
Yeah, it deals
okay, never mind. Sorry about that.
No worries.
That seems powerful. A bunch of 0 costs with Altruist. And Posesi hates to see it. The ambush is just gonna get blown away by these repeated 1 damage.
Next card off the top, which could be drawn on this turn, obviously, with a 0-mana Spectral.
Right.
Yeah, Frenzy Bellowing.
Yeah, just allows him to play yet another 0-cost card. Is this just gonna be some type of OTK cosplay from the Tempo Demon Hunter?
It's looking at the very least extremely close to that.
Okay, that is too expensive to be played just now. And crucially, Surrender has to face tank the if he wants to get rid of it.
Which
probably not gonna bother. Yeah, 9 health. Oh, he is gonna bother, I guess, preventing...
So there's a chance now, right, for Posesi to take the game?
Well, there's Metamorphosis, so he's gotta end it.
He has to
now.
win. He has to win right now. How does he do that? Ethereal Lackey into... If it's Ethereal Lackey into Eviscerate, and then he can Shadow Step it and get another Eviscerate, and then Hero Power into 1 more damage?
Yes, okay, there's Sinister Strike, I suppose.
Sinister Strike, yeah. Waxamancy can't offer Leroy anymore, which would have been lethal with the Cold Blood.
It cannot. And I'm not seeing it. Does he have to go for?
And then you
some
hero
type
power,
of-
right? Yeah.
Yes, it's less expensive than the devoted.
That's not what you want.
I'm not seeing the out anymore. Blade Flurry.
There's no weapon.
Wait, no weapon, no weapon.
I mean, he would have been dead anyway, even if he cleared the board
Yeah.
completely.
True enough. And it looks like with yet another very tense middle part of the game.
Nothing that can be done there for
Yeah.
Posesi, and it does mean the series is going to be equalized one game apiece. A very difficult to play game there at the end for Surrender, but I think actually, despite us getting like a little confused about one-off lethal, I think he actually played that fantastically at the end of the game. The turn where he went for the Satyr Overseer instead of the Glade-bound Adept, I think was fantastic. That made the turn 7 for Posesi really, really awkward, because he really wanted to play the Galakron, but at the same time, he was facing down, what even was that, like 12 damage on the board, which he had to just tank straight to the face. And then on the following turn, not going for the fake lethal setup and instead throwing out the Skull of Gul'dan. I think it was a really nice way for Surrender to maximize his odds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked about why Demon Hunter is so powerful. It heals more than Priest, back before the nerfs at least. It does the weapons better than Warrior. It draws better than Warlock. And now it does tokens Druid, apparently, with the Satyr Overseer. So very well played from Surrender there. And also, I think, pretty good recognition from Posesi when its outs were landing eventually on just going for some type of lackey lethal at the end there. And it's all tied up now, getting down to the wire. I'm still worried about the mage.
Yeah, still worried about the mage for Surrender. But one thing I'm feeling pretty good about for Surrender is his warrior build. I am far from convinced that it is necessarily the final version of the deck. I think there's still a lot of room for improving this particular build of warrior. Do you go for bombs? Do you go for eggs? Do you go for the kind of pseudo OTK with Corkrons and the Bloodsworn mercenaries as well? But no matter what it ends up as, I think for the moment at least, Surrender has a really nice build here with the bomb warrior that seems to be doing very well against aggro and also control.
We've been calling it, I guess now we've called it Fast Bomb Warrior. It's in text now, so it can no longer be disputed as to what the name is, at least over here in APAC. And we see some very explosive, pun intended, games from the Warrior on day one, especially in the mirror. I especially remember the wing lethal from Chonsu against Surrender to proc his own boom bots. That was a little. And now, though, I feel like it would be in a pretty good spot no matter what deck from Posesi it lines up against.
I think I would definitely like it as well. The rogue that is left, it can go for a little bit more of a late game punch, I suppose, than just going for the all-out damage plan. But it feels like damage just very much does not get there against Warrior anymore with the Armor Smith in addition to the risky skipper nonsense that you can go for. I'd really like Surrender's chances of taking it. And also, if you're drawing a whole bunch of cards in this deck with High Sparrow, Hogwaggle, and Galakron, you're also going to be drawing a whole lot of bombs.
The opener from Posesi, he actually chooses to toss away Evil Miscreant. That's not something I see too often, but I remember though back in the old days of just the old pirate rogue with the what do you call it, raiding party back against Bomb Warrior. It was not necessarily a keep unless you had Shark or whatever it was when the boomers played it. So maybe Posesi is looking for more pressure instead of necessarily just lackey value.
Yeah, I think it's also just when you're on the play instead of the coin, it's just, there's not quite enough spells to activate it. You got to get exactly Shadow Step or Backstab. So searching for the more proactive options, maybe trying to find Hanar in the early game to get the secrets rolling seems like a pretty good way to start the game.
Well, I would actually argue with that a little bit because the deck generates a lot of lackeys, so maybe you don't play the Miscreant on turn 3, but on 4 it'll be active, as long as you've invoked one way or another.
Sure, but then even then it's, you have to find Seal of Fate then on turn 3 on something that isn't damaged, which is not
or
necessarily
praise
guaranteed against
Galakron.
Warrior. Yeah. I mean, like, it can be good, but I think you want something that's a bit more consistently powerful when you're on the coin.
Fair enough. So there is Praise Galakron. It's a little bit awkward the way the mana is lined up. At the very least, Posesi has that very strong combination of these Secret and Blackjack Stunner.
So does he save the secret because of that?
I guess not. I don't know though. In terms of the 3-drop minions that you would like to bounce back, I guess bouncing accomplishes just as much as the poison to deal with it does. If it's the Bomb Wrangler, at least the poison minion gets a value trade.
What now?
Yeah, I think the main thing is it just helps him lock down the board here quite nicely. You can maybe curve into Edwin following turn, just a Kobold Lackey. But the problem with all this early game seizing of the board is the fact that he knows his opponent has Ankar in hand, obviously, because he's swinging with it. And that also means he's very, very likely to find a risky skipper, which means all your board presence that you've generated probably is just going to disappear.
Fair enough. And I guess the deciding factor, again, for playing this secret also is because it makes sure that the Grand Mummy, Death Rattle, gets at least one target.
Yeah.
So, surrender now. I mean, it's super awkward no matter where he chooses to swing this, right? And he's actually choosing instead, it looks like, to soften up the Assassin, is what it's called? I'm not sure. Or just hold back.
Yeah, that makes some amount of sense as well. I think, like, you know, what you are doing with this warrior deck is quite clearly setting up for some kind of a big combo. When you have Bloodsworn Mercenary, Bomb Wrangler, Armor Smith in hand, it's just the risky skipper that you're waiting for. So you may as well wait for the swing to see where it's needed next turn, and then all but guarantee yourself a draw of the risky skipper. I think he has actually guaranteed when he swings next turn.
Fair enough. So for Posesi here, are you liking some type of Kobold Lackey Edwin play? It is just a 4/4, but I don't think there's anything particularly worth stunning with the secret here.
I mean, you could just go Secret Hero Power and then go... Oh, sorry. Yeah, Secret plus Dagger. And then double 1-drop Edwin on turn 5. Probably worth the +1/+1. +2/+2, sorry, because... the Secret is a pretty good development on this turn. You're still getting yourself a very nice upgrade.
Yeah, I guess the only thing you can't guarantee at that point is that the secret still remains for the Blackjack to use. But maybe that is less important than the immediate value the secret has and getting a better Edwin and surrender. I think that was a happy look to the right for once. That is a very understated understated 5-drop.
Yeah, dodged another one. Says surrender. As the Bomb Wrangler comes down, I think this is a really nice play to go for here. There was some consideration as to whether you go for Armor Smith, I suppose, to kind of cash in the armor while you can. But just developing the board presence here, I think, is far and away the most important thing.
Posesi wants to remove both of the 2 health minions, both very threatening, but I guess he's choosing to prioritize the Bomb Wrangler first, make sure it doesn't get any more boombots than it needs to. And like you mentioned, everything that looks like it can be developed this turn, if it's the Faceless Lackey, could easily be cleared away by the skippers and the bomb. So now it looks like Posesi's whole game plan is just kind of survive until Galakron, which hasn't been invoked very much at all.
So many options.
And go from there.
Yeah. I mean, until he's hitting Togwaggle or, I don't know, a few more invokes one after the other, that really is just the best plan he's got.
Good recognition from Posesi, of course, to remove 1 health off the skipper so that it only gets 1 more activation.
Weirdly enough, though, Southsea Captain could be used to get 2 more activations out of the skipper, if that were necessary. I guess it's not a particularly... you're not getting that much advantage out of getting another activation, so I wouldn't mind going for something else.
Wow, that boom! Those just managed to clear off the Miscreant together.
Yeah, that was perfect.
And now Surrender has his choice of how he wants to develop onto the board. And you're kind of wishing that the skipper didn't have its effect right now, because then you could go for just deckhand and become Pirate Warrior.
Wow, he resurrects the Anchor, which I think the only pirate left in the deck is that one risky skipper. Both the Sky Raiders and the Pillager, obviously on the board, have already been found. I was definitely expecting him to try and get the Wrench Caliber down first and then get that back to hand.
Yeah. I was gonna say maybe it's more of a matter of just trying to get the most damage onto the board because the 4/2 body is also just nothing to scoff at. But he did have the option of going something like South Sea Captain and Armor Smith. It's interesting.
And to be fair, Risky Skipper on its own is still just a very, very powerful card and is pretty good here to just clear up the board, gain all the armor, and just develop board presence as well in combination with Bloodsworn Mercenary.
Posesi now has invoked twice, I believe, so at least the Galakrond will draw him 2 cards, but definitely not ideal with the minions he's been generating / evolving. So Surrender could go for that armor generation turn now if he so chooses. Maybe it doesn't seem worth it quite yet. The hand is very reactive. Yeah, looks like he's just gonna take a full pass this turn. Oh, sure, of course. Just re-equip the Wrench Caliber, but nothing developed onto the board, recognizing that this hand is too valuable to just use for tempo when Posesi could very easily swing it back with him.
Yeah, and I think in the words of a Surrender and Mr. Incredible, he's still got time. He's got plenty of removal to be thrown down for the next few turns, which will bide him the time to find that battle rage. Most importantly, I think that's far and away the most important card for him to find. And he's keeping that Risky Skipper for as long as possible, so when he does get it, he can keep up with the card draw.
And it's looking like now that the Rogue is, on paper, running out of steam. But actually, Galakrond Rogue has tons of value available to it, given that it generates the right lackeys. If we see Posesi just press his hero power every turn, start getting things like the Draconic Lackey, or even the Ethereal in some cases, there might be a way he could actually outlast what Surrender has in hand, because it's so reactive. It's maybe will come down to the bombs. It looks like both players are just holding back on their resources. Because if you're Posesi, he only really has like 2 or 3 cards in hand. I don't count the Blackjack Stunners as being active at all.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I know it's just this particular matchup, but they have looked incredibly weak so far.
Indeed.
And, you know, if we were just looking at saps instead, say, I probably wouldn't be bringing it up because they're so core, it felt like, for Rogue in a long time. But, you know, if this is the payoff for putting the secrets in your deck, so far it's felt like a very not worth it payoff at all.
I mean, to be fair, there were instances where you could have held grits to make sure that the Blackjack was active. And there also just weren't any minions that Surrender played so far that seemed particularly worth bouncing back. This is probably not the matchup where you want the Blackjacks to really shine. In any case, though, that's not exactly the lackey that Posesi wants. I really get the feeling he's looking to just outlast by generating value. And that's something that Galakrond Rogue can pivot to if the game plan so dictates.
Oh, absolutely. You know, if you're changing your options as well, for example, like taking Crown off of Heist Baron Togwaggle, or maybe even a Goblet if you want to get really crazy, you can get a lot of value.
Posesi finally pulls the trigger on the Edwin. And I like the trade of the Novice there and holding back what is essentially the last weapon charge.
Yeah.
He knows that by this point, there's gotta be some form of removal from Surrender. He's running the Shield Slams and the Brawls and the Blade Storms and, of course, the Risky Skipper combo. So I don't think Posesi expects this board to stick. He's just trying to do something so that Surrender also has to do something whilst waiting to draw bigger bombs.
I think he's also given himself the best chance of, well, making this as awkward as possible, because Blade Storm at the moment, 2 you know, a 1 and a 4 health minion would have to be taken out before Edwin would die. There's not that much on the board, so Brawl actually has a decent chance of the Edwin surviving.
And
Not
in
that it
that
happens
case,
here, though.
yeah. In that case, do you think he would have committed the Blade Storm? I think it's worth it.
If the Edwin had survived, for sure, I think.
Yes, especially with second Brawl in hand. And now, seems like we might even be transitioning to some sort of I don't want to say fatigue, because this is still Bomb Warrior.
Yeah.
But they're hardly playing anything every turn. They're pressing their hero power every turn.
I think that what the
That
Warrior...
to me indicates fatigue.
Yeah, but I think that what the Warrior is trying to do here is Surrender isn't playing any cards, because as I said, he wants to save up for a combo. I think primarily that is Battle Rage, so he can draw through to the rest of his powerful cards in the deck. But to be fair, it could also be, you know, just setting up for a huge swing turn that does a huge load of damage to Posesi if he finds the other Bomb Wrangler as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that Battle Rages is exactly what Surrender is looking for, outside of Boom Mad Genius, Blastmaster Boom himself, because that's the only way that Surrender has to actually pressure onto the board. The rest of the deck is, like, most of the rest of the minions have been drawn already.
Yep.
I suppose there's also Kargath, but that's more of a reactive minion. And the other unique inclusion in this kind of off the wall to begin with Warrior from Surrender is the Zephyrus.
Very true. Once that becomes active, that could definitely turn the tables in Surrender's favor. I will say as well that I think one of the things Posesi has done best this game that I really admire him for is figuring out exactly how much to commit to the board. I think he's done that very, very well. Like on the Edwin turn, he had a couple of extra lackeys in hand he could have just thrown down and made it into a 12-12, but he didn't. He held back. It was just enough to bait out a Brawl, but still had a chance of the Edwin surviving. This board he's got here clearly didn't warrant a Brawl from Surrender, but it's still 5 damage that he was able to get to face. It's just that little bit enough to hurt Surrender, but not quite enough to warrant removal, which is very difficult to find. But I think Posesi's done very well.
Definitely that sweet spot, and it's getting to the point where maybe it warrants the Risky Skipper combo.
Maybe, maybe.
And if that's used, then that's the best way for Surrender to draw through the rest of his deck, Expended. So it's really difficult now for Surrender to decide how he wants to allocate the removal. I guess in theory, he could also just take one more turn to wait and hope to draw the Battle Rage then before he goes off, because again, the Rogue isn't threatening much in the realm of reach anymore.
I think I like just holding back. I know it's unlikely that he gets it in, you know, the next 1, 2, maybe even 3 turns. But there are still 2 Battle Rages in his deck. He's also got Cycle in the form of Shield Block. And I think if he doesn't go for it and just goes all in here, that gives Posesi everything he needs to know. He just vomits onto the board every turn as much as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And Surrender's just left pretty high and dry.
That's a good point. This game has just been so... Oh, there it is! That is exactly what Surrender needs. You can see it on his face. I was going to say, the game was so weird in how it was panning out because Surrender was taking very long to draw into any sort of pressure or bombs or even card draw, but Posesi has been incredibly unlucky with his lackeys. Not a single Draconic or Ethereal generated, I believe, since the hero power became Galacrons. And that is very bad, given that he's been drawing very low value cards off the top of his deck. And now Surrender...
Absolutely absurd amount of armor off here as well.
Pretty much invincible now.
Yeah. Blastmaster Boom, Deathwing, all the goodness that you could possibly need to take down a rogue. This is starting to look very juicy for Surrender.
This flick, though, pretty clean. And also with the Secret Drawn, he can finally start generating value. This is like the first actually good late game Hanar I've seen.
And I guess you can actually step the Hanar as well. So next turn, Posesi could go for another full turn of Secret Generation.
It's true. Like, the only other decent step target he has is the Flick, I suppose. And with 2 Shadow Steps, I think it's completely warranted just to give him some ways to spend his mana. And I couldn't tell you what the third secret was, but did with a bamboozle into a redemption, I believe.
Don't let the door hit you.
And Posesi's actually holding back on the flick. I wonder if it's maybe saved to deal with a bunch of boom bots, but also the blackjacks here overdraw surrender. That's worth noting.
Very true. Yeah, I guess he needs to clear up the board well enough to...
From Posesi's perspective as well, I guess giving extra armor to surrender just doesn't matter at this point. There's no way he's winning in terms of damage. Oh, Karga! That is a big one
Yeah,
to
it's a pretty
lose
good
for
one to
surrender.
overdraw.
Yeah. This is gonna get the last remaining wrench caliber.
Yeah, he wants to juice up Blast Master Boom as much as possible.
Posesi didn't end up shadow stepping the Hanar, but he could potentially shadow step a Tog, and surrender knowing now that Posesi has probably got into some of his powerful cards. He's gonna be thinking about just activating Boom as soon as possible as his first priority.
Yeah, he also needs to think about trying to kill off the Kobold Lackey potentially. I mean, this is cast division getting to me a little bit here, but if he's considering every single angle perfectly, then he'll know there's no lackeys in hand, which means that if he kills the Kobold, Togwaggle and this treasure gained can't be played on the same turn, which maybe warrants a Deathwing.
Very true. And the real power of Hanar is nobody remembers all the Paladin secrets anymore.
Very
Maybe the
true.
Hunter ones.
I have not played around those in quite a while.
Yeah. Messing a little bit with surrender there. Posesi pretty much survives the turn with the same board intact. But he's got to be aware now that Blastmaster Boon is coming down soon. He's got a fair amount of bombs left in the deck as well. So maybe it is that time where we're looking for crowns instead of wands.
So now, Gia, with him going for another full turn of Hanar, obviously I was saying that's something he could consider going for with a Shadow Step last turn. Is it even correct to go for it here? Are the secrets doing enough to warrant spending all this mana on them? Or should it be going for something like Togwaggle instead?
I don't think they're doing enough. None of these are preventing even just the wrench caliber going face, and that's enough damage to kind of put Posesi in the range of 3 bombs, right? After the 8 swings, he goes down to 15. Then Blastmaster Boom will be active. I'm not sure how it gets there. We did see him pick Eye for an Eye, though, which is something I never expected to see in 2020.
Yeah, what is that? Freezing Trap, Eye for an Eye, Noble Sacrifice is quite a big one to stop the weapon swing going.
A crazy game. Hanar still not biting the bullet. I didn't notice the spell damage there, but that's pretty good for Posesi. Yeah, if you're surrender here, I don't think this board warrants any weapon swings.
Thank you.
We see the fun interaction between Noble Sacrifice and Bamboozle. I could not tell you the name of that card, but it's dead now.
Excellent casting, Gia.
Yeah, the Bladestorm at least clears off 2 minions. And
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if it's worth going for Deathwing, but then obviously if it's something like the Repentance,
This
then
freezing trap, I mean, Deathwing's battle cry is to attack, right? So,
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Into my trap.
oh man, so strange. But yes,
Very
Surrender
strange.
correctly recognized that he has to somehow pile on the damage now, otherwise Posesi could just keep going on and on with the value. So
So
Posesi,
after
I
he
think,
takes out
yeah.
Blastmaster Boom, could then follow up with... What is
Flick?
it? Is it time for a flick on the bombs?
I mean, I think it's time to widen out the board so there's as many things as possible to soak up the
Yeah.
bomb damage.
Yeah, I agree. And then what's he picking?
Oh man.
We've already seen a crown once this weekend, and it's
Yes.
time for crown again.
It is just too scary to go for wand and definitely
Yeah.
for goblet if you've got that many
Oh my god.
that many bombs in the deck. These are not very well statted. Barista with a
yeah.
shadow step though.
Oh my god. What?
Wait a minute.
What?
Wait a minute.
Darkness
Do you,
Let me
do you
replay
step
this
the
turn.
Togwaggle and the Barista? One of each.
Maybe. I mean, then the Tog generates another crown, which generates another burst. I don't know.
Oh my god, we keep going.
Oh, this is crazy. And yeah, I think Posesi definitely had the right game plan there, which is just trying to soak up all the bomb damage. Now Surrender is just running out of threats. Of course, the bombs are still threats.
The bombs
but,
are huge
yeah.
threats.
And of
I mean, as long
course-
as Surrender can clear the board, I think he's in with a pretty good shot. Swing Face deals 4 extra damage, brings Posesi down to 15. Nice multiple of 5. Zephyrus obviously can deliver that final extra damage in the form of, you know, Inner Demon, Lava Burst, whatever is needed.
It's true. And Surrender doesn't have to worry about his own health total anytime soon, even though he's likely to fatigue before Posesi does. If we even do get to fatigue, probably not. So is it gonna be the Deathwing? I cannot remember if he's tested for Freezing Trap, but here we go. Oh my gosh! With a little wave from Posesi!
Alright, Posesi, new favorite Grandmaster. That alone makes him absolute god tier Grandmaster.
It really does.
Well, Deathwing being back where he should be, at least in terms of mana cost, up to 10. It's still a pretty good play on the next turn. It's not completely devastating for Surrender, as long
But
as
what
these
is
bombs start turning
devastating
up.
is this Barista, though. I mean, look at the value.
Is it that bad?
You can,
Like,
okay, look. Posesi can fill his hand and prevent bombs from going off.
oh my god.
Can't he? I mean,
Is that actually how you win?
I don't know, Tara. What even is Hearthstone?
Maybe it is. At least for one turn, right?
Yeah. This does fill his hand, right? Yeah, he goes back
Yep.
to 10. I don't know if there's anything left in the deck that he particularly wants. Tog has been used. Oh my god!
So then Brawl comes down this turn, clears up almost everything.
And
Posesi's going to have to play something else eventually.
true. But there might be a way for him to refill again, since he's still got another Barista, another Shadow Step. Refill the board and his hand. And that kind of blocks out Surrender's win conditions, as far as I can see. Okay, it's a big deal that the only non-battle cry minion on the board survived, though.
Fair.
One. Okay, it's
Man,
going
I mean,
on
this
now.
is getting crazy, but these kind of situations are where I
Oh,
feel like...
Bob is over Jonas as well! The
Okay.
plan is coming together!
It's coming together,
Okay.
and this is what I was going to say. This is where a lot of Grandmasters, I feel, would fall apart. They know the openings. They know the average outcome of most games. This is far from an average outcome that Posesi's got himself into now, and I think he's adapting on the fly really, really well, spotting the 10-card overdraw, spotting the Barista Lynch and Shadow Step to even facilitate that in the first place. I think this is some really, really well-played Hearthstone coming through from Posesi. And he's doing it again! He's just going to keep
Definitely is.
overdrawing.
Yeah, he's got the daring escape. I don't see any chance that Posesi's running out of value or ways to make sure his hand can't actually draw bombs in the near future. Surrender's on his last card in the deck, and Posesi, I think, will be very easily clearing out the Deathwing. He's got Alec or some combination of lackeys, or even the Restless Mummy. Oh my gosh.
This was such a sick game of Hearthstone.
I completely agree. Maybe not for Surrender to be in the spot. I mean, if your Surrender, you keep thinking like, where did wrong, right? But in the end, you have to realize Galakrond Rogue, especially with Galakrond played early, can just generate tons of value. Of course, Barista is an outlier off of the crown.
Yeah.
But again, you also have to consider that Posesi didn't get any of the Draconic lackeys early on, which could have presented way more threats and called for an earlier brawl, perhaps. Going up to 10 again. And does this
Zephyrus
give...
Tyrion, I think, is probably what we're going to be seeing.
Correct, yeah. Or...
But if that does happen, Or maybe Natalie Celine to take out the flick. But either
No,
way,
I
Posesi
think-
now can just go Secret plus Blackjack Stunner. Tyrion's back up to 10.
Exactly.
Good one.
I definitely think the pick was Tyrion there, because now Surrender is just looking for that Ashbringer to deal the 15 over 3 turns. It's probably not going to happen. But now Posesi is faced again with the problem of making sure he goes to 10 cards in hand.
I mean, he could value trade and then Daring Escape. And obviously press the hero power.
Correct.
Oh, he's doing that anyway here, right? He's just playing a faceless Lucky first, which
Mm-hmm.
does effectively the same thing.
And still maintaining the barista while that happens. There's also the other option of maybe trying to go wide on board. Now he has the full information that there's no more board clears left from Surrender. And of course, it's still unlikely that I think remaining 3 bombs are all drawn in a row. So you could go for something like evolving the flick into a 7-drop.
I think it's remaining 4 bombs, right? Because one of them was
4?
Corsair cached.
Oh,
so
you're
it's
right.
5,
You're
There
right.
was 5 altogether this game.
Okay, so in that case, I guess there's no reason for Posesi to take any more risks because the fatigue eventually will just set in for Surrender. He just stays at 10 every single turn,
Oh,
flicks away Tyrion maybe, or
it's just going to keep getting Blackjack
Wait.
stunned back to hand, turn after turn.
and the turn is another bomb overdraw. I didn't even notice that there was another Blackjack. This is crazy, guys.
Give us the wave, Posesi. Wave bye-bye to Surrender this game. This is over.
Double pump that Verano extra.
Absolutely
Starlight has
nuts.
a nice room for mana spice coming right up.
Just unlimited Blackjack stunners. Have a bright wing
picks
as
the
well, why
bright
don't
wing.
you?
Oh
Of
my
course
God.
he does.
Who is
Of course
this
he
man?
does. It's Battle Cry. Of course you pick the bright wing.
You can't just come into Grandmasters, start overdrawing bombs, and picking Brightwing.
Well, some might say you can't just wave goodbye to one of the most popular players in competitive Hearthstone. But Posesi, the madman, he's done it. Alright, so what was our count now? 3 bombs left. So there's still a chance of him dying, but he's, of course, gone back up to 10.
Yeah.
The Galakron hero power is insane. And Surrender has no choice but to keep replaying the Tyrion because the rest of the hand is pretty much useless.
Finally. Oh no, wait, of course, I was going to say he can't sap it again. Of course he can. Blackjack Stunner yet again. Shadow stepped back.
This is gotta be it, right? Between the damage on board
Don't let the door.
and the fatigue. 7, 9, 10, 11. Okay, maybe not quite yet, but over 2 turns, surely.
Posesi is just playing with Surrender here. Like, this is cruel at this point.
It is. And Surrender doesn't bother to play the, 5th Tyrion of that game. And my god, what a grueling match. That was just game 3. The series is not over.
Sips his tea like an absolute madman. Posesi, that was easily the best series of Hearthstone that we've seen from APAC so far this year. I could
And
not
it's
be
not
happier.
even over.
It's not even over, exactly. Just one game. I seriously just could not be happier to have him here joining us in Grandmasters this year. What a game.
It really was. I mean, just the way it panned out at the beginning was so strange, where the rogue whiffed on anything good. Maybe that's really just a consequence of running the whole secret package, but then whiffed on a lot of good lackeys from Galakron. And then the warrior, despite having a firm grip on the board and a high health total throughout the whole game, took very long to draw Battle Rage, and so couldn't get the bombs in early enough during that window where the rogue was doing nothing. And suddenly, baristas off crowns and shadow steps, and I don't know what happened after that, Derek.
Yeah, I think, the one big thing that sticks out to me for Surrender was the fact that he went for a very early Horde Pillager that had a 100% chance of getting the Ankar back to hand when he only had 1 pirate left in the deck. The upside of that was, of course, as you said at the time, he gets a body on board and he guarantees him himself to draw the other skill. A very powerful card at the time. But I wonder if at that point it might have been worth going for a more aggressive game plan in terms of wrench calibers, trying to resurrect that instead, get up to, 5, 6, maybe 7 bombs shuffled into the deck over the course of the game instead.
It can be framed that way, but to be completely fair to Surrender, I don't know if you can ever account for a Galakron rogue being able to refill their hand and the board every single turn, thus pressuring you and overdrawing all the bombs.
I'm trying to find ways he could have improved. He did just kind of get dunked on. There's no two ways about it. Posesi just absolutely rolled this man. But with the rogue out of the way there for Posesi, we are going to move on to the Warlock, I believe, now that he has left for this potentially final game of the series. 2-1 up and just needs to take a win with the Warlock. But we have seen reverse sweeps on Galakron Warlock so far already this week, and I believe it was Kin on the first day who ended up losing 0-3 versus Surrender, actually, who Posesi is up against now. So if anyone is going to be taking down this Warlock, I feel like Surrender is the man to do so.
Definitely, and he'll be very happy to know that there is much less room for just random card generation or lucky generation coming from the Warlock. It is very, very defined waves of threats that he's going to be running into. Of course, all of the invokes, the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, and of course, Galakron himself. So Surrender manages to just allocate his removal well enough. The Warrior can definitely have a chance against the Warlock, not to mention that the bombs could also deal an unexpected lethal, especially when the Warlock is tapping away.
That's absolutely right. I think that in addition to that, what is the other remaining deck? The Mage, yeah, that could be a little bit harder, of course, for Surrender. It is the deck that we do have been significantly, or I should say, it's the deck we've been most unsure about over the course of this series for Surrender. And with a start like that for Posesi, maybe he'll be able to take a win with the Warrior, so we'll be able to see the Mage afterwards.
Perhaps Surrender at the very least has the Courser Cash into Bomb Wrangler into most lines under Wrench Caliber. Ankar also a very good outcome.
I think Ankar's much better actually here, probably.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's less likely, but it is very good.
Yes. Yeah. Does he really go for the Bomb Wrangler over the Ankar? Are there any oozes in the Warrior list? In the Warlock, there's no oozes either, so you've got no fear of it being destroyed. I've got to be honest, I would have expected an Ankar there to try and set up for a risky skipper Bomb Wrangler turn instead.
Yeah, I was looking at that as well. Granted, it's not guaranteed to get exactly risky skipper.
Of course,
but But I guess in terms
eventually
of the...
it's very likely.
In terms of the single target removal, though, actually there's a fair bit. There's the 2 Nether Breaths, and we did see that new card, Unstable Fell Vault. So I'm not sure. I also would have expected that.
Either way, it comes down now, and he can start trying to draw through his deck, find the risky skipper, but there's not really all too much synergy with it now that the Bomb Wrangler has already been played out. So maybe we're going to see an alternative strategy from Surrender this game. He does already have the Battle Rage, so he might be a little bit more liberal with his use of risky skipper this game. But the game plan may instead just be swing every weapon charge face and hope that the bombs can close things out. It's probably a pretty key part of the deck strategy.
I like the sound of that, Dark.
I'm sure you do.
Speaking of unusual strategies, we did talk about Posesi's Warlock list a lot recently, which is the version that includes Fiendish Rites, where a lot of people are cutting that already. So it's extra invokes, a little bit more juice for the Galakron, and I guess extra imps could be a little bit annoying for the Warrior if the last game is any indication. Like the little chip damage that Posesi got in the beginning forced Surrender to commit some of the removal that I bet he wished he had later on in the game.
Risk skipper not even found here. I suppose you probably wouldn't have played it anyway there, just to take off these 2 minions. It obviously sucks taking this damage early on in the game. But I think for Surrender, it's just not really something he cares about that much. He's much more the aggressor in this matchup. Ooh.
So another shield of Galakron off the top for Posesi there.
He's
Kinda
invoking
insane,
pretty
right?
quick.
Yeah. We saw this the other day from Glory too, and with the 2 shields, the Fiendish Rites, Kronks, that could be quite a blowout. Thankfully for Surrender, he's got both of the brawls ready. But he's already just taking so much damage from having to take just 2 hits from the Shield of Galakron, essentially. So I guess starts with draw.
Yeah,
of the
it doesn't
Skyvateer.
guarantee a risky skipper. It's a 2 out of 3, I believe. And you're not even guaranteed necessarily to go for it yet. You do want to wait for an Armor Smith, a Bomb Wrangler, something that gives you a little bit more synergy first.
I was thinking draw off of the Skyvateer, not necessarily
okay.
Anchor.
Right,
but it
sorry,
does make it a little bit awkward because if you are looking to get risky skipper, you want to send the Skyvateer into the 4-5, not the 4-1. But in every other world, it should go into the 4-1. Then again, he's got a 1-2, so no matter where it lands. Never mind, we're just throwing a brawl in already. And that, I think, is such a win for Posesi. That's just not too much of a threat at all.
4-1 surviving. That's bad, but it's not the end of the world for Surrender.
It's painful, though.
Yeah.
And there's the skipper. Drawn off, not the Anchor, but off the Skyvateer.
I definitely like swinging in there, nonetheless. I think given that you can draw Sky Raider, that's obviously a nice upside. And also the main point is just you have an absolute ton of weapons in hand when you need to start swinging.
Speaking of ton of weapons, he's even got the Captain Greenskin, but does Surrender even have the time? Posesi's just got the Galakron, and he's still ahead on board. Surrender's low on health. I did not expect the matchup to go this way around.
Well, Surrender does now have the Armor Smith at the very least, so he could, I think, pretty much certainly get himself a Shield Slam on this turn to take out the Kronks, whilst also gaining a tremendous amount of armor.
Yep. So it's looking like Skipper, Armor Smith, trade in your guy, play the Blood. Well, you don't even have to trade in at that point because the Shield Slam will do all the damage, so you might as well send it face.
The other consideration, however, is to not even bother clearing. You don't have to do it on this turn. You could instead just equip a weapon and start swinging face. Or is that just too risky?
It seems a little bit risky to me, because if you don't clear this turn, you go down to a very low health total, right? And then what if Posesi plays Galakron, gets high health demons, then you suddenly have to heal up and play Brawl, and that just doesn't seem like it fits within the mana. Okay, so Surrender back and healthy again. And Posesi actually, he could go for the Fiendish Rites with Plague of Flames, but that's not clearing everything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are ways he can clear pretty much everything with like Unstable Fellbolt first, but I don't know, it feels a little bit overkill on this board.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it kind of depends on what Posesi thinks his game plan is, right? Because it seemed like he was being very aggressive, looking for a game minion damage instead of trying to outvalue the warrior, which I think makes sense because the warrior has much more powerful draw engines, and also just the bombs are kind of a timer on Posesi.
I think that means that there's also one more invoke needed to fully invoke Galakron, with the 2 Shields of Galakron and the Fiendish Rite.
Right. So you might be seeing Posesi hold back a little bit to get the full demons.
Doesn't feel great.
It doesn't. I mean, that means the whole turn is kind of empty unless he draws exactly what, like, Veiled Worshipper is a good one. My goodness.
Yep, that's a fantastic card. Let's slam that down.
All right. There's the 4th invoke. And the 5th invoke, I guess.
I guess you're probably going for Fiendish Rite because you want to save Dragonblight Cultist to go for the widest plague.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Or you could, of course, go for the Dragonblight, expecting it to survive, and then try and buff everything up with Fiendish Rite. But I feel like that's a little bit optimistic.
it's a reach when there's double Blade Storm in the deck. The spiritual successor to Warpath.
Ah, it's a shadow of its former self. I tell you.
Bones of the fall.
Posesi disagrees still. Alright, now for Surrender. It looks pretty juicy to just keep swinging away at the face. There's also ways for him to clear the board.
Yeah, this definitely smells like a second risky skipper turn right now because, you know, as we were saying in the previous game, you want to save it for another Battle Rage, but he only has 10 cards in deck. Like, having the other Battle Rage is not that necessary, I feel like, at this point, given that he actually needs more time, if anything, to get through these ridiculous number of weapon charges that he has.
The problem with the risky skipper turn is that you can only activate it twice, which is one short of being able to trade the Armor Smith and kill off the Veiled Worshipper that way. I really like developing the green skin. And then he just uses the Blade Storm to clean up the rest, keeps the skipper in hand. And Posesi has quite a few bombs in the deck now.
Yeah, you've convinced me. I like this one as well. Galakrond looking pretty juicy here. Yeah.
And we also just didn't mention the effect of the bombs shutting off Dragon Queen and Zephyrus for probably the rest of the game. Because by the time there's only one bomb remaining, I suspect that Posesi's health total is at a big fat 0.
Pretty pathetic lot of demons as well. Only one top tier one, the rest all very, very small.
True. However, Posesi can just say, you don't have the second brawl, and just chip this Nether Breath into the greenskin, go face. However, I think he does have the read that... is it the read or the full information that the second risky skipper is in hand, so leaving up the Armor Smith might also seem a little bit scary. Okay, then again, because the Armor Smith is at 1 health, the risky skipper just gains an extra 2 armor off of it, whereas sinking 5 damage into it kind of heals Surrender for more, so to speak.
It's again one of those things where maybe there's some way that he can gain more armor off of it, but you've got to play the averages, and I think this works out much better for Posesi.
And Surrender rips the second brawl now. That is the worst outcome for him.
That's the one thing he didn't want to see.
He can clear it with the Kargath, but it's going to be painful.
Oh. So the actual effect there on Betrug is not that bad, really, in this deck. Because you're not really developing that much onto the board anymore. They only have Rush. They die at the end of the turn. Fine. And because of that, I was going to say, do you just start smacking face and hope that that can get there before the end of the game?
You know what? I think that's totally right. Forget I said anything about clearing. It is a bit awkward, though, for Surrender that he's at a multiple of 5+1. I guess that's fixed by the Wrench Caliber swings anyway. And Posesi, I think, correctly realizes that there's a lot of removal being expended. Who cares if Alexstrasza doesn't bring her buddies? This is just the pressure he needs to try and close out the game as soon as possible. That's quite a draw.
You just need the 2-turn clock, but now Risky Skipper Blastmaster is available if you wanted to go for the immediate push, because on the other side, there's 15 damage in play. And
Another
only 20
breath
health.
Left in hand. One already used.
Nether Breath is 1 off. Moarg obviously doesn't buff that, but Fiendish Rite, of which Surrender knows there's 1 left in Posesi's deck,
I think the skipper's happening, but I wonder if the Armor Smith is also happening alongside it to prevent...
You only get 4 bombs then.
You do, but it's tough. I'm not sure. Surrender's clearly thinking about it, right?
I mean, maybe he doesn't go for Blastmaster at all. It's just Bomb Wrangler plus Kargath.
Fair. Okay, well, he's gone through pretty much all of our thought processes and landed on maximizing the bomb damage. And that's a lot of 4s and 3s. Whoa. My goodness!
That's insane!
What?
Posesi can't believe it. You can't believe it. I can't believe it. Surrender's just winning.
was godlike. I mean, second only to the wave from Posesi, because that was also pretty godlike. I don't know anymore. It looks like we're going to game 5, Derek.
If only he was sat across from his opponent so he could just wave right back now, that would be the perfect BM.
What a game.
So, in terms of taking it back, it could be on this turn, Fiendish Rite, Hero Power, Plague, and then Nether Breath to face, or Sack Pouch.
Yes. And hope to not draw a bomb. And in that case, he would then have to Alex defensively.
Yeah.
But surrender, he's got the next Wrench Caliber charge. There's still a ton of bombs in the deck, I believe. Although there's also just the option, there's also an option of just an 8-12-12 though.
Like every turn you wait is a turn they get closer to Moarg. Oh no, wait, it's not playing Moarg. So I was going to say Moarg plus Nether Breath, but I guess that's not even a possibility. But either way, I still think it's just such a good chance of winning the game from the spot. You take it.
For sure. And if the Bomb Wrangler sticks, then the Deathwing can just, do stuff to the boom bots as well.
Very true.
But, I mean, this whole series has been such a load of fun. Honestly, last game, you did say Surrender just got rolled. This time, Posesi just got dunked on, I believe, by those boom bots.
Did indeed.
Surrender now thinking that he just doesn't play a minion to deny Nether Breath a target. Or
but it can still go face, right?
Oh, does it get the... Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah.
That it only... Not playing a minion only denies the Moarg, which wasn't there to begin with. And there's the bomb.
Very nice, easy win there at the end for Surrender. Hard fought, it must be said, but I think a well-played game overall. It was a very quick transition from Surrender, where he was, at the start of the game, brawling, Blade Storm, risky skipper, clearing up the board every turn. And then at a certain point, as soon as Betrug won the brawl, he was just like, right, you know what? This is getting ridiculous. I'm going to go back to basics, start smacking you over the head with a spanner. And it managed to get there.
I'm still out of words. I'm even still thinking about the game before this, but either way, you look at it, both of the players have been just... They've had to have nerves of steel to just keep going after all of the ridiculousness that's happened so far. And even though there was, ridiculousness in terms of the cards that were generated and the numbers rolled by the boom bots, both of them recognized what the line was when put into these very, very niche situations. And that, I think, is the mark of a very good Hearthstone player.
Agreed. I think this has been a very, very high caliber series of Hearthstone overall. I've loved a lot from both players. In the rogue game, obviously from Posesi, still for me the highlight with overdrawing deliberately all the bombs. But as I said there, the lightning fast switch there from Surrender of going for board control to face damage, I think was absolutely correct and very, very well spotted. But it does final game is going to be, I believe, the Warlock from Posesi up against the Mage from Surrender. Can be a little bit of a volatile matchup, I suppose, given the burst damage that Warlock can go for a hand. But how do you expect this matchup to be shaking out, Gia? Who's on the aggressive? Who's on the defensive?
It's kind of tough to say, but I would be inclined to put the aggression on the Mage, actually, because simply because they have freezes. I would say that's the main thing that they have as just a tool in their arsenal that the Warlock doesn't have too many answers to, because, as you mentioned, a lot of the Warlock board clears are symmetrical. So if the Mage freezes, they get the face damage in.
True.
Warlock has to expend something like Plague of Flames or Dark Skies. They clear their own board in the process, and the net result is that Mage got damage in.
Yeah, well, we can take a look at what tools the Mage will be using to go for that aggression right now, as I believe we have the Mage deck Spotlight up and running. As you can see here, there's one key card that seems to be missing from what you may know and love from the Reno Mage. That is, of course, Luna's Pocket Galaxy, in addition to Stargazer Luna herself. That is gone. The Boomsday Project has rotated out, and now you're relying on a much more quote-unquote honest game plan here with the Mage, rather than getting out all your big minions for 1 mana. Obviously, that means you have less ability to go super aggressive in the mid game after you've hit Luna's Pocket Galaxy. But it also means that the deck has kind of tended a little bit more towards aggressiveness. Here we see Astromancer, Solarian, Khadgar, Acidic Swampoos. Obviously, a lot of those can function also as defensive tools, but it still has the side effect of playing a little bit more aggressively here, which I think, like you said, will be Surrender's best chance of winning.
Yeah, it is also, though, having to pack some of these new neutral, more control-y cards, Overconfident Orc and Rusty Raider. Although I guess the Orc can be aggressive if your opponent doesn't have a lot of small ping effects. And for Warlock, it is kind of expensive to get rid of one of their health. It has to come from cards like Mortal Coil, etc. So yeah, I think the mage, definitely we shouldn't count it out yet. And of course, there's still that chance of generating fireballs or Malagos's fireballs. And the box, the infamous box.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a weird matchup. Like you said, the box, obviously, Reno at the end, things can get very, very funky indeed. But given that the Warlock is overall, I would say, a little bit of a light build, a light deck, I should say, in terms of threats. The only real punch you have in the late game is Dragon Queen, Alexstrasza, Kronks, and of course Galakrond itself for a nice big board of demons. The mage should have enough resources to be able to deal with all of that, with Puzzle Box, Reno, Blizzard, Rolling Fireball, all that good removal. That if it does get to the late game, maybe they can just outlast the Warlock's threats. But with this hand for Surrender, maybe it's not even gonna get to the late game.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty crazy. The Zephrys curving into an early Reno if he wants to, or even just if he wants to just play Animal Companion and then Twilight Drake as a 2-3-4 curve. That also just seems to look kind of strong to me.
Does indeed. Definitely considering Animal Companion here, despite the fact that Wild Growth is almost always the pick for Mage, and in the end does turn out to still be the pick here for Surrender. Just because you could have gone Animal Companion into Twilight Drake, maybe even straight into Fireball. That is a Rolling Fireball, sorry. That would have been a very aggressive curve indeed.
It's aggressive, but ultimately, looking at the cards in his deck and not just what's in hand right now, there's a lot more potential for huge power spikes unlocked when you just ramp earlier, so it makes a lot of sense still to go for that. Surrender can play the Twilight Drake, I suspect he will. And Posesi could easily remove that with a Plague of Flames if he so chooses. Or he could even just possibly wait, like the Plague of Flames could get better targets, and he's got ways to generate minions for it.
It's actually really close, I think. I'm kind of sat right on the fence, because on turn 6, what are you expecting? Is it a big development turn? Dragoncaster is far and away the scariest thing you can expect if you have an empty board. But if you just go for Plague on this turn, that's the only thing they can really do that's powerful. Reno is not that good.
Right. And I actually like the conclusion that Posesi landed on, is that, okay, Reno is not that good here. It does clear the board, and it still sucks for him, but at least in the case of Dragoncaster into development, that requires Surrender to trade into something. And at that point, there's still enough minions for Plague of Flames to deal with stuff.
Kind of interesting here again. I'm not sure that it's actually correct to go for Reno here necessarily. You could go for Blizzard instead if you want to get a little bit less... if you want to be a bit less vulnerable to Plague of Flames, as we were saying, or Dark Skies. That is in the end what Surrender goes for. It does mean that, Blizzard is good now, no matter what, so use that now. Next turn, Reno, and then that curves really nicely into Power of Creation on 8 instead.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's great recognition from Surrender to time the Reno. I mean, on 6, it looks so powerful. You got the swing with more damage, but this is one of those games where Surrender's had a good enough start that the Blizzard didn't even have to be saved for when Galakrond is played by Posesi. The timing also shuts off things like Shield of Galakrond.
Yeah, true. Which Blizzard obviously would be much weaker against. As we can see, it would actually probably have worked out better if Surrender had gone for Reno, just because he would have been able to push the extra 4 damage there, and there still would have been no clear with Plague of Flames. But, you've got to play the average. It's not about results-oriented play.
Absolutely. Both players with not a great turn 6.
That's a decent turn now. You can just go Dragonflight,
Sorry,
Blade,
5.
and you're very happy.
Yeah, talking about the previous turn, and
Oh, sure.
that actually puts Posesi at not too high of a health total. It's pretty insane how much pressure Surrender managed to put together. He's rolling into Power of Creation now and seen Plague of Flames. Zessie, scratch of the neck, does not want to see this.
Yeah, the dirigibles are perfectly reasonable here, I think. It's just 6/6 chunky bodies. Pretty difficult to deal with, again, now that the Plague has just been used. Interested to see what Posesi goes for here. That does allow a clear now, right, with the
Right.
unstable Fellbolt as well.
You would Nether Breath first?
Oh yeah, Nether Breath
no.
first, sorry, yeah.
Right.
What does it? It goes to 8 and then...
I will act as your
Maybe it doesn't if Zessie didn't go for it. And so this rolling fireball,
I actually think that would have been a clear. I think it was exactly a clear.
yeah, he was at 9 cards. Yeah.
Because it deals 1 and then repeats for every other card in hand, and there were 7 cards in hand. But
Oh,
either way,
but if he had started with the Nether Breath, that would mean
he was at 9 cards, so we would have gone down to 8.
8.
Play the Dark Skies, which deals 1 and then repeats for every other card in hand.
Right. Okay.
Which I think was exactly 8 damage.
So probably a missed opportunity from Zessie there, unless he was really tunneling on saving the Nether Breath for base damage. But even then, Unstable Fellbolt could have helped.
And to be fair, you know, I've been known to mess up the maths before as well, but Posesi puts his hands purely into Galakrond here. Tiny little hands though they may be, maybe they can save him, but unfortunately, that does not save him. The mage just dominated this game. What
the aggression we were talking about, I mean,
For a mortal.
impressive. Change that to mage from mortal. Impressive for a mage without a box. And that, I gotta say, was a really unexpected conclusion to the series. A real heartbreak for Posesi. We saw him at the very last frame of his camera. Got up from his chair. I'm sure he needs to take a few minutes to just kind of let it sink in what happened. It's crazy.
I was just getting going, Gia. That series felt like it had only just begun with that final game in particular there. But the mage, I think, played very well by Surrender. The only real big decision point for him, I suppose there were 2. It was Wild Growth over Animal Companion, which maybe is easier than I was making out. The Wild Growth did just smooth out his curves so nicely, so I think that was definitely correct. And even the Reno versus Blizzard, I think, again, because like you pointed out, on turn 5, you're expecting to see either Shield of Galakrond or the Crazed Netherwing on turn 5 as well. The Reno does fantastically against that, so I think on average, Surrender was definitely making the best plays there, and it just worked out really well for him.
And yeah, I gotta say, props to Surrender for keeping it together, because surely if I were in his spot in that game 3 as Warrior versus Rogue, I would have been tearing my hair out at this point, having to play against Shadow Step Barista. But yeah, that does mean that we will have, I mean, we did expect at least one Korean player, but it will be an all-Korean finals.
It will indeed. That's right. We can take a look at the bracket now, I believe, to see what that finals is going to look like. Chonsu and Posesi, unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to. We will see them later next week when they fight through the Swiss and trying to get into the top 8 again. But the real men of the hour here, Rivius and Surrender, are going to be our 2 finals, duking it out to see who can come away with the full 6 points.
True enough, and Chonsu and Posesi do walk away with 4 points. That's still a lot, but it is going to be so exciting to see. I mean, it's just so great that we get to crown a champion so-and-so. Maybe the word is a little bit too grandiose, but a champion every week. I just love the sound of that.
Yeah, maybe we should go with something a little bit less intense, like Overlord or Grand Master of the Universe.
Look, we were already going for godlike, just based off of Wave from Posesi, so we can call that.
I mean, that was godlike. You cannot deny. That was just the actions of an absolute madman. But yeah, I believe that is going to be us all set up for the finals now. It is going to be, as we said, Rivius and Surrender. If you had to guess, Gia, who you would put in the lead, Rivius on his Warrior, Galakrond Priest, Demon Hunter, and the Druid, versus Surrender on the Druid, Demon Hunter, Warrior, and Mage. Who are you putting in the lead? What are the weak spots? And what are these players? What can we expect?